Welcome to the Awakened Goddess Show, your source for inspiration, wisdom, and personal discovery. The place to learn from a diverse mix of mentors, metaphysical experts, spiritual leaders, and best-selling authors from around the world. I'm Angela Wilkinson, mindset mentor and founder of the Awakened Goddess Academy. Join me as I explore the minds of my masterful guests while they share powerful insights and easy-to-use tools you can start using right away. Now, let's tap into the energy of the Awakened Goddess and be enlightened by today's guest. Hey, I'm your host, Angela Wilkinson, and welcome to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. Michelle Wadleigh is an inspiring and exciting coach, speaker, workshop and retreat facilitator, and sought-after prayer practitioner. Michelle is the founding spiritual director of the Center for Spiritual Living in North New Jersey. She's a very unique practical teacher who's passionate about you mastering a fully expressed life. She's grounded in solid metaphysical principles and brings to her teaching a wide open heart along with a sense of humor. She's a straight shooter who calls things as she sees them. The lesson that she brings everywhere is everything is consciousness. Consciousness first, consciousness always. Michelle is the author of 3 books, including her newest, Prosperous Me. She has also recorded 2 inspiring CDs, Organic Visioning and I Am Awake. Today, Michelle and I talk about forgiveness and living an authentic, fully expressed life. But before I talk with Michelle, have you heard about the annual giveaway of a goddess's favorite things? Well, it's coming soon, and if you love surrounding yourself with beautiful things that make you feel more feminine, spiritual, and connected, you're going to love this. I'm going to share some of my favorite spiritual tools and things that I love that help me connect to myself and the divine. Not only that, I'll be doing a daily giveaway so you can win a goddess's favorite things. It's coming soon, so go to theawakenedgoddess.com/AGFT to get all of the details. That's theawakenedgoddess.com/AGFT, all lowercase, to get the details. Now let's talk to Reverend Michelle. Well, welcome, Reverend Michelle, to the Awakened Goddess Show. I am super excited to have you here because you are a Jersey girl, and I've got a Jersey girl in the house. Woohoo!
Yes, you do.
So thank you.
I'm sure you'll hear it in a minute.
I know. It's been a little while since I've been in New Jersey, so it's great to have you joining me today and chatting.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's talk about this Rev Jersey girl, because I know that that's how we can connect with you online. So tell me about that.
Well, Rev Jersey Girl and that name, it's funny. At first, it just came out of me needing to have a new email address. But when I did that, it became clear that that was a great name for my persona, because one of the things about me that matters most to me, and I think the people around me, is my availability. And when I don't mean just that you can talk to me, but how every single thing that I do, that I teach, is absolutely pragmatic. I keep everything simple, and I never hide who I am. And I've been known to say in church that I might be the only tattoo-bearing, tequila-shooting, sex-loving minister you'll ever meet. but that's the New Jersey in me, and that keeps it real. And that's where my teaching comes from, is that anybody can get the tools and the skills that we teach and be happy with it. So, the Rev Jersey Girl is just part of that, and I like being a Jersey girl.
Yeah, and coming from the West, I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, and so when I moved to New Jersey, it was culture shock, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions for the Jersey folk, because you guys are just so passionate, and just like you say, you just say it like it is. There's no beating around the bush, and I love that.
We were opening a Facebook page for me and my website that's under construction. So I did some research about how they describe a Jersey girl, and as I'm reading the description, I thought, oh, that's me. That's me. And it is. We're straight shooters, but we are as equally passionate, loving, and compassionate as we are straight and honest.
Mm-hmm.
So we're available, but we're available just in a big way.
Yes, totally
You know,
big.
so.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, okay, tell me about how you became the founding spiritual director at the Center for Spiritual Living in New Jersey. Was that a calling, or how did that come about?
Oh dear, I would love to tell you that I had some deep spiritual calling. I would love to tell you that. And because I hear friends say that. I hear friends say that they felt the call or they heard the call. And I'm like, what call? What? And I didn't have that.
Yeah.
Really what it was is I have always had a practical way of seeing life. And when I got into this movement, the spiritual center, I found people, as I was doing my growth work, people were listening to me. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of surprising. And I would look around to look at why were they listening to me? And then I realized it's because I was willing to do the work. And I knew how to make it simple. I knew how to explain things. So the first part of my journey was to become a prayer practitioner, which in our profession in our teaching is a profession. And then suddenly there was a ministerial course being offered. And to be honest with you, it was the next thing. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, even though I might have gotten not the great grades in the class, I always got the essence, and I teach from essence. And so it was a really natural, it was very natural. Most people call me just Michelle because I think of the title as just a wedge. Mm-hmm. So when I opened the center, it's because I wanted a center that reflected who I was specifically. So our Sundays are filled with a diversity and all sorts of ages and colors of people, and sometimes we're sacred, and sometimes we're doing rock and roll on a Sunday. Yeah. And it's everything in between, but it's fun. I'll say to somebody, if you were here, I would say to you, come play with us. Mm-hmm. More than come worship. Come play. Come have some fun. Come feel good with us. Mm-hmm. And so that's really how all that came about. And people who wanted that softer side will choose my center.
Mm-hmm. When we don't know or we're not familiar with something, it seems a little intimidating, or like we're just not quite sure what's behind those doors. And I love that you create this space that it's very down to earth and very practical and very open, and it's like an easy step in.
Well, and it is difficult, and I will often say to people, thank you for getting out of bed and choosing to walk in these doors. Mm-hmm. Because you could have just stayed in bed, or you could have gone somewhere else. Because it can be, and we do everything we can to not be intimidating, but that doesn't mean it's not, and I understand that. Mm-hmm. So even when we do we love to hug and kiss around here. Oh, we love us some hugging. But I'll say to the first-time visitors, stay seated. If you're seated, that tells us you want to ride this one out. So we respect the person that comes in. We don't try to overwhelm them, like as if they want our attention. Mm-hmm. And we make room. Mm-hmm. So we make room for people who are different. And yet I always invite them to be involved should they want to be. Mm-hmm. But it takes a lot of courage to walk in someplace for the first time. I remember when I did it, it was confusing, the language and everything else, which is why I try to keep it real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So let's talk about your core principles that you teach. Everything is consciousness, consciousness first, and consciousness always. So how did that come about?
Well, in what I teach from the science of mind, I'm trying to keep it simple. I want to make sure I don't get caught in my jargon.
Well, okay, let's take one step back. Explain what is the science of mind. We'll start there.
A Science of Mind was a book, and it is a teaching, and it was pulled together by a man about almost 90 years ago now, Ernest Holmes, who was brought up a Christian, but who had a very curious mind that his mother supported in being curious and asking questions. He came out of Maine. He had a certain amount of time, a few years in a Christian Science center. He had that influence, and then he went out west and he started reading and studying all the Bibles, all these different methods of metaphysics and such, and Emerson. So you have the transcendentalist involved in influencing him. And he pulled this all together and created this teaching that basically respects, honors, and where you get to cultivate the presence of whatever you want to call it. It could be the intelligence within you. Mm-hmm. So it's not an outside worship. There's a recognizing. So the science of mind is learning how to recognize the place within you where intelligence dwells. And you get to have a relationship with it that's so beautiful that then you get to learn how to co-create your world from that relationship. Yeah. But it's very personal, yet it's absolute. So it all depends on what you bring to it. That's what you receive from it. And it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing about what we do is that through the teaching, individuals learn to love themselves in a way that they never have before. They learn to be responsible. And that's not always a fun word.
Right.
People are afraid of that word. And I do everything I can to help people not to be afraid, because here's the difference. If you are willing to be responsible for your world and as you create it, then you also innately within that are given the power to recreate it. See, it comes as a package. Mm-hmm. But if you don't want to be responsible, and if you want to blame others, you are then powerless to transform your world. And it will feel powerless because you'll be trying to rearrange the deck chairs on the sinking Titanic.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
But if you say, wow, I am in and of myself able to see the world in a way that I know that I created this, that I set this in motion. Sometimes we do it consciously. Sometimes we do it unconsciously. So that's why I say consciousness first, because as we become self-aware, and we realize how we set things in motion, we are more equipped to recreate it from that conscious place. And man, it becomes beautiful. Mm-hmm. Relationships become more beautiful because you're never at the mercy of what was. You learn a practice of forgiveness so that you can release the energy stuck and then recreate the relationships. So joy becomes a natural outcome, almost spontaneous, just pockets of joy that are just there, mainly because you're walking around, you're not angry, mm-hmm. You're not blaming the world, because when you're in a state of blame, it's very disempowering. And so the people in the world that are walking around blaming and angry and complaining and gossiping do not realize how they are cutting themselves off mm-hmm. from their source of power. It's sad. They just don't know.
That's true.
God, I wish I could tell them more of them.
That's why we're here, right? So let's talk about forgiveness, because I know forgiveness is such a huge thing. And for a long time, I didn't realize, I was like, oh, I don't feel like I need to forgive anyone. But then when I started kind of looking into it deeper, it was like, oh, okay, so I understand it a little bit more. So let's talk about forgiveness and why that's so important. And then, we'll start with that.
Yeah, this is critical. Mm-hmm. And it's something that has become, first of all, I want to give credit to someone, and I think he has written the number one best book for forgiveness, and that's Colin Tipping in Radical Forgiveness. To me, I think he's the pinnacle. He is the man when it comes to forgiveness, and I'm so grateful I was in a workshop with him many years ago, got his book, and I require it of my practitioners that I train. So I just want to give him credit for his influence here. So I've had a practice of forgiveness for a long time. And over the years, it's happened in layers. And then a little while ago, I started doing more. I've always also had a practice of silent meditation. So I recently did some retreats, and one of them was with a student of Adyashanti's. Mm-hmm. So we spent 5 days in deep silence, and she would speak about forgiveness. Suddenly, forgiveness stopped being a conscious thing for me, and it started to be deeper. Mm-hmm. It started to become a priority like nothing else ever had. I'm one of 7. I came out of a family of sexual abuse. 5 girls, 2 boys. All the girls were abused, and some of the grandchildren. Mm-hmm. I came out of a household where alcoholism was common. Thank God I escaped that somehow, and I don't really know how. But the kind of forgiveness that I practice, and that I've been practicing for years, has helped me to not be identified as a victim, mm-hmm. to not even be identified almost within my own heart and mind as one who survived something like that. It's not my identification anymore. So I get to not separate myself, but I get to rise out of the ashes of that and to be who I want to be. And in that, I get to love my family, my mother and my father, despite everything that went on. And I've become who I am, almost not despite them, but because of them, mm-hmm. because of my willingness to transcend that. And then I get to have compassion for them. And can I give you a little bit more on this?
Oh, sure, yes.
Okay, so Don Miguel Ruiz is another influence of mine. And I remember before he got big, his English was not that good back in those days, but his message came through. Mm-hmm. And I was at a weekend retreat with him, and I'll never forget this. He was working with a woman during the retreat who had a traumatic experience younger. It might have been a rape. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, when he was talking to her, now please don't take this as an authority for anybody out there. Dear God, I know that these things have to be handled properly. I'm making this reference for a purpose. Don Miguel was working with this woman, and she struck the point with this woman that 30 years after the event, she was still suffering from the event. And he basically asked her, well, who's been holding it in place? Mm-hmm. Now, that's a big ouch.
Mm-hmm. It is.
That's a big ouch. So one has to do that very sensitively. But what I have found when working with my clients and my students, that so much of the forgiveness that has to be done is with ourselves. Because I have to forgive myself if I have chosen to continue to suffer. Mm-hmm. Right. And I will ask people when I'm working with them, are you willing to forgive yourself for keeping that in place? And every single time they say yes, there's this opening, and they realize, oh my God, I held this here. So when they say yes and they're willing to release it, freedom in so many directions, and then you're free to be who you choose to be, because you're not at the mercy of that experience. Mm-hmm. This is very deep work. This is not easy stuff, Angela.
No, it's not.
But deep and meaningful. I get emotional thinking about it, because it's just the payoff is personal freedom. Mm-hmm. That, and
Well, and we talked earlier about how it's important to be responsible, but on the flip side, sometimes I think we take too much responsibility and take on too much burden because we think we have to carry all of the past, all of those choices we made.
Right.
And we're holding on to so much energy that's stuck, and it doesn't allow us to manifest the life that we want.
Right. So if we're actually practicing freedom, what actually happens is we're letting it pass through us. Just pass through us. So we don't have to continue to carry.
Mm-hmm.
Because the truth is, we have to be responsible for what is within our scope of our life, and within on our radar to be able to implement change and transformation. And then at some point you have to let go of what you can't change, because then you've got to make room for other people to make their own mistakes, to lift themselves up. While you're there, you get to be a witness, but you're not always in charge. You're just not.
Well, and what you said just a few minutes ago about how you didn't follow this path despite your family, but that it allowed it was part of why you became who you are. And I think that is such an important point, is that I don't believe that there are really any mistakes, or everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we experience, are the choices that we make. We're making the best choice in the moment for what our current awareness.
Always.
And it's going through that journey, making those tough decisions, making those so-called mistakes, that does lead us to developing into the person that we're supposed to.
I have probably, not even probably, I know the depth of compassion that I have been able to cultivate is a direct result of what I went through.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can have really hard conversations with people that haven't learned how to forgive their perpetrators. So I get to be in that hard conversation, and I get to love them, and I get to support them, and I get to say, hey, we can do this. Mm-hmm. You can do this. Because you're not that story. Right. And we forget that. We're not the story. We're the, yes, that is part of our history, but history doesn't define us now. And so in many ways, and I know this, that some people shudder if I say this, but in many ways I'm grateful. Mm-hmm. Because I'm really, really good at loving myself and loving others, and all of that has come because of my healing journey.
Mm-hmm. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the forgiveness piece, because I think it's one of those things that it's easy to say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then when we actually come to that point for the time of forgiveness, we're so used to holding on and holding that energy that it's scary, or it's that unknown. It's like, well, what happens if I let this go? Then what? Who am I? So let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and there's a few layers of that. So there's different levels of things that you'll want to forgive. So there are people that have very serious trauma in their lives. And then there is just some of the silly, stupid stuff that happens in life. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about both of them. I'll try to do it as quickly as possible. If it's not something that's a childhood trauma, let's say it's not that, one of the things I want to point out is that one of the reasons why we find ourselves needing to forgive is because we initially judged. Mm-hmm. We object to someone. We object to who they are, to their way of being. We want them to be different. So we've judged them to not be okay. We object to their behavior. So because we have done all that, then they're being in a way that is in conflict with the way we want them to be. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden now we have something to forgive them for. But if you look, if anybody listening, there's many, many places, not with the heavy things, but there are many places you look, you will find if you just stop objecting, you won't need to forgive. Mm-hmm. Because you're not holding that person as wrong.
Right.
So you can't really talk about forgiveness without talking about judgment. So that's one layer. But the other thing is very important, and I let myself start this conversation with you without really focusing on it enough. Self-forgiveness is so important. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Forgiving myself for my behavior, forgiving myself for judging, forgiving myself for finding fault, forgiving in myself or in others. Mm-hmm. Or if you're a religious or spiritual person, forgiving yourself because when you're criticizing another, in a way, you're criticizing the essence of God. Mm-hmm. You're criticizing because if we are all one with this one incredible source, then any criticism is a criticism of the divine. So you get to forgive yourself for being, am I making sense?
Oh, total sense, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you get to this place where you realize that you have never been forsaken. And if I've never been forsaken, then I get to be free in this.
Yeah.
And that becomes magical when you can start seeing that.
Well, so, and truly, when we're judging, when we think we're judging someone else, we're really judging ourselves.
Always, some aspect of yourself, always. Mm-hmm. Hence the shadow work, which is critical, hard, but critical. So the part of forgiving someone who's really harmed, like when it's real, not that other times aren't real. I don't want to really trip on my words, but there's levels of hurt and pain. Mm-hmm. At that point, the person who's been harmed has got to want freedom more than they want their pain and suffering. Mm-hmm. They have got to want to be free, fully expressed, madly alive, joyous. And they have to want that enough to simply say, or to realize, wow, both of these things can't consume the same space at the same time. I can be angry, hold people at fault, blame others, or I can be madly in love, wonderfully expressed, joyously happy, but I can't have both at the same time. And so it has to begin with an intelligent thought that says, I want to be happy enough that I want to let go. And one of the things that people sometimes are afraid of, they're afraid that if they let go, they'll be hurt again. But the truth is, when you are being authentic, you awaken inside of yourself lots of intuition, lots of inspiration, but the intuition is actually the important part. And you will find yourself, you will be able to trust yourself and your decisions more. Being spiritual is not about being a doormat. Right. It's about having the intuition to enter or not enter a relationship. And when you clean up the hurt within you by this forgiveness work, you make better decisions. You know who you are. You know what you're capable of. This is not an overnight process. And I see by the shaking of your head, you know that. I mean, this is a process. But the more we do it, the more quickly it happens. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is that when we do this work, there's a point where we stop cultivating new reasons to forgive someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like we get ahead of the equation, which is great.
Well, yeah, it's like that tipping point when we realize that drama that we're creating in our own world it doesn't feel as good as the other side.
Yeah, you lose taste for it.
Yeah.
It's like when people every year I have people in my center once or twice a year go on a 30-day fast of from gossiping and complaining.
Mm-hmm.
And I say to them, I promise you, it might be hard at first, but a couple of weeks in, you're going to lose your taste for it because you realize the effect. It's toxic.
It is.
And so you'll lose your taste and you won't want to go back. And so the same thing with what we're talking about. Yeah. The joy available in life is more perfect, more beautiful than the pleasure of being angry and finding fault.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned living authentically. So it seems like then we're not truly able to live our full authentic self if we're holding judgment.
I would say that's a safe statement. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about how do we know if we're living authentically? Because I think that, sometimes, we all have blinders on about certain aspects of our life. Certain things in our life we just can't see where we're maybe out of alignment. So how do we know if we're living authentically?
Great question. That actually came up today in the class I taught. Oh. Your body, my body, is like a divining rod. And your body, the cells of our body, the physical body, holds on to the vibration of the life that we've lived. Eckhart Tolle refers to it as the pain body. Mm-hmm. We contain within us, and I mean now the physical body at a cellular level, mm-hmm. memories, the pain, that comes from or that gets stored there after our life experience. So, but what also is stored there is pleasure. They're both stored. So when we do our healing work, and when we begin waking up, and when we begin choosing joy, the thing that's going to tell you whether you're living authentically or not is learning how to read your body. People are in denial of the effect of their body. We talk about mind, body, spirit in the spiritual world, but very often people cut it off. They cut themselves off at the head.
It's so true.
And they separate head from body. So what happens is we do what we call the spiritual bypass. Oh, it's all good. Yeah. Life is good. And we negate what we're really feeling. So someone will walk in, their stomach is tight, their fists are clenched, or their shoulders are tense. And they say, oh, it's all good. Life is good. Well, your body's saying something different. And memories are captured there within your body. And if you learn to read it, you'll get ahead of what's actually trying to get your attention. You'll also be able to, with doing your healing work, and many of us have a different methodology. I'm not even talking about methodology here. Mm-hmm. But if you do your healing work, these memories and the pain won't store in the body and they won't turn into disease. Yes. And that's what a lot of people don't realize, that it turns unexpressed or, ill that's hung out there long enough diseases the cells of the body. Mm-hmm. But if I'm living authentically, I'm going to practice what I call radical honesty, which means I never deny when I'm feeling something. I never blame someone else. And the question I ask myself is, what did I bring to the table? So that makes me look back at me, because I'm responsible. And then I get to say, okay, I'm holding on to something, or I'm angry, or I feel fearful, or I feel even jealous of. And when I'm real and I'm willing to practice that level of honesty, I'm being authentic. Yeah. And then, I'm being authentic. And if my body tells me differently, I have to go back and listen again. Does that answer?
It does. And okay. I think back to all the years growing up, and I could, for so many years, I had that complete sense that I felt disconnected right at my neck. Like my head, I was a smart girl. I could figure my way out of anything. But I didn't know how I felt. People would ask me, how do you feel? I don't know. And it was like I had no understanding of what feelings felt like. And boy, oh boy, I think that there's a lot of people that are in a similar situation where they think a feeling. They're like, yes. I'm angry. But they're not really feeling the feeling in their body. Yeah.
I've learned how I've had to learn because I had to become sensitive to that person and didn't know how to identify it. So I'll be working with somebody, doing deep work with them, and I'll ask them, well, how does that feel? Well, I don't know. I just don't think that I like them to do that. Well, whoa, no. How do you feel about that?
Yep.
Well, I really think they're wrong and they shouldn't do that. And I'd do it again. And so it taught me over the years, wow, many of us are disconnected from our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've had a lot of judgment around it. We were not taught, we were not taught how to feel, or we weren't given permission to be angry or to be upset. We weren't given permission. Many people were never given permission.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us didn't, I had a spiritual teacher. Her name was Rita Sperling Rogers. She was brilliant at all this stuff. So I got to learn when I was knee-high to a grasshopper from back then to learn to acknowledge what I was feeling, never deny it, and let it guide me toward my wholness.
Mm.
So thank God for that teaching.
Yeah, what a blessing.
Seriously.
What a blessing. Yeah, I mean, I became a therapist. And even through that period, it was like challenging to come in contact with feelings. So, yeah, I everybody that's listening, tap in and learn those feelings. Get out of your head, into your body, drop in, and start practicing feeling safe, feeling those feelings.
Yeah, since you just said that, one of the ways to feel safe is to not judge that you're feeling them.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time you judge, you feel wrong for doing it. And who's going to want to keep looking if every time you look, you feel wrong?
Right.
So one of the quickest ways to do it is to say, it's okay to feel. No matter what I'm feeling, it's all okay. And it's all forgivable. And so, and to help you feel that too, or to help you identify it, sometimes now you might not be able to do this when you drive in a car, but you close your eyes and you move into your breath and you just say, okay, what is my body telling me? What am I feeling? And you ask your body and you let your body tell you. But you're right, it's so important. Not always easy, but so important.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that to have a connection, a connection with divine that you can work with and be conscious of, part of that experience is being in your body and feeling those feelings.
Right.
Because source energy can be very subtle, and it
yes.
can be it's working through us all the time, and we a lot of times will we have to unlearn how to hear or feel source.
Yeah. Right.
Ooh.
Good stuff.
Yeah. As we kind of wrap up, I'm wondering if there's anything that you're feeling called to talk about or share or say.
There's a 4-letter word that doesn't get a lot of respect in the spiritual realm, especially the teaching that I'm in, because it's considered fluffy and not very powerful. And that's the word hope. It gets, I think it gets a lot of disrespect. But as one who's come through many hard things, many more than I told you, as one who has come through many hard things, sometimes that glimmer of hope that something's possible, it was the only thing I had to hold on to. And I remember one time when my marriage was breaking up and I was a mess. And I went down to the living room, and I'm laying on the couch, and I'm sobbing. And I was feeling like the worst piece of dirt on the face of the earth. And as I'm laying there crying, there was this little tiny voice that reminded me there was still something worthwhile in me. And that was that little voice of hope. So the work that I do, and I know the work that therapists do, and the work that priests and monks and people who are all about people do, it's all because we want to keep alive that place of hope in people. Mm-hmm. So it might not be a very potent word, but I find it to be potent because it's how we keep the door open to healing. Hope keeps that space alive in us. And I think it's so important. So I would just invite everyone to just know that something's possible, that everyone is worth the work, and that there is within us that space that has never been hurt, harmed, or injured in any way, and we just have to get back to it. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say.
Oh, I love that. Because hope, like you say, it's not a word that we really honor, and we really give it the power that it truly has.
Well, for those who are hurting especially.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's the doorway. There's doorway to potential.
Well, I always think of the salesman who, the old pictures of salesmen, how they put their foot in the door to keep it open.
Yeah.
So you put your foot, like hope says, like, all right, I'm going to keep my foot in the door, and I'm going to keep it open. I'm going to keep access so that the light of the presence of whatever you believe in can find me. Mm-hmm. But if you close the door, it makes it a little more difficult. But that little place of hope, that 4-letter word says, okay, come find me. That I'm available.
And you are available. You're holding a space, and you offer so much to people.
Oh, you mean thank you?
Yes, I'm speaking to you.
I didn't know you meant me then. Okay, I missed that. I'm working at it. That's what I do. What I do. It's every breath of my body is to do that to the best of my ability.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Cool. So I know you're very practical, so let's talk about a practical tip that that the listeners can start using right now.
Okay, hands down, one of the best things ever, and Oprah made it famous. I've just put a little twist on it, and it's a little different than a blessings journal. That when you're having a really rough time, I don't care if you scratch it on toilet paper, that every night before you go to sleep, you make a list of the things you found yourself doing right on that day. And maybe on the first day, there'll be 1 or 2 things, and maybe it's just that you got out of bed. But you make a list of everything you found yourself doing right, and then the next morning before you get on your way, you read what you wrote the night before. And watch how that list grows. Now, you could just turn that also into a blessings list, but sometimes really what we have to cultivate is that love inside. And when we're appreciating ourselves and approving of ourselves, that self-love grows. Mm-hmm. So the practical tip is find yourself doing something right and be your own best cheerleader.
That's awesome. I love that twist. Cool. So how can everybody get in touch with you? How can they find you online?
Well, my Facebook is a great way, Rev Jersey Girl. My website for the center where I teach, we're in New Jersey, is the Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, and that's cslnj.org. But the truth is, I am one of hundreds of ministers and centers literally around the world, primarily in the States, many in Canada and other places. And if you look at the website called Centers for Spiritual Living, right there in Oregon, there's, like I said, 4 centers right there. Yeah. And one is a fascinating or lovely young adult community, which is just wonderful. We are everywhere. And if you come into my center, let me know, and I will just scoop you up. And, my books are all available through Amazon.com, and I'm available for prayer or for coaching or a variety of things. We do online classes, so we make ourselves as available as possible. I don't really care where someone goes, though. I just want them to get somewhere where they could be seen and loved.
Yeah, cool. And so I will have links to all the ways to connect with Michelle and her books, and so you guys can check her out and get all of her great stuff. And when I'm back in New York and New Jersey, I will definitely come visit and give you a hug. Yes. And then you have a special gift for the listeners. So tell us about that.
Good. I want to tell you about that. So for 60 years, there was a little booklet called Creative Thought. It was published by our organization, and thousands of people read it. But for a variety of reasons, it went out of print. I had a member who was in the teaching 50 years. When she heard that book was going out, she said, "Oh no, that can't happen." I wasn't willing to put something in print, but we created an online e-magazine called Creative Thinking. And it has articles and videos that are uplifting and inspirational. And there's a daily, what we call spiritual mind treatment. You can call them an affirmative prayer, and you can receive them on a daily basis on your in your inbox. And these are just uplifting, wonderful words of love and hope and direction and a sense of possibility. And so when you sign up, you get a year's free subscription. You're just going to love it.
Wow.
So I hope they take advantage and do plug in and get that free subscription.
That's amazing. I'm definitely going to hook myself up with that.
Yeah, please.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was like an incredible conversation. I never know where we're going to end up, and it was such a beautiful conversation that we had, and so powerful and so important. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking me. Thank you to Roz Miller Choice for introducing us. Just thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yes, Roz is a dear friend of mine. We meet every week, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
lovely.
Awesome. Well, and now I'd love to hear from you, my gorgeous goddess. Was there something that Michelle or I shared that resonated with you? If so, I'd love to hear about it. You can leave us a comment on today's show page at theawakenedgoddess.com. So get yourself over there and leave a comment right now. Did you enjoy this episode? If so, subscribe to the show and please share it with your friends. And if you want even more incredible resources, join the Awakened Goddess community to get Michelle's amazing gift and bonus content from the show. Until next time, goodbye everyone! Thank you for listening to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. I hope you enjoyed today's guest and got something you can start using in your life right away. For more spiritual insights and to listen to more episodes, subscribe to The Awakened Goddess Show at theawakenedgoddess.com and discover wisdom that'll change your life.